it makes a lot of sense that most liquid assets pair against each other and traded, but the future of Bitcoin's liquidity is goods and services. Not only is that what makes it the most liquid good, but it also creates the greatest diversity of liquidity. And when you think about that on an individual basis as a business, it's like you can either have one pipe that is your single point of failure. If you bank with Silicon Valley Bank, you got that bank as a single point of failure. It's no more anymore, but like, you know, pick your bank, you know, Bank of America, Citi, even JP Morgan. And that one of the things that I talk about in Bitcoin is the great definancialization, is this idea that there's something cathartic about starting to save, not take risk, but save in a form of money that is actually engineered to align with your own incentives. And the cathartic part about it is that when your money is working in your favor rather than against it, you can actually start to focus on only working on the things that you actually want to do on a day-to-day basis rather than working to pay bills. You know, because those are two very different things. And once your money starts to work in your favor rather than actively be engineered against you, then you actually start thinking about money less. You start, you know, and you stop thinking about how am I going to pay the bills less. And what that allows you to do is actually create focus on like, what do I want to be doing today? There's an instinctual question, which is, well, the government's never going to allow that, you know, and they're going to ban it. And the logical point that I help connect for people is when do they connect that, you know? So we're probably another cycle, you know, another 10x wave of adoption, where it's like, I think there's probably a psychological crossing of like when Bitcoin's over 100,000, you know, in fiat terms, even though at the end of the day, and I always like to reinforce, like, doesn't matter what the dollar value is, like the dollar's going away and we're going to be buying, you know, beef and gas and, you know, medicine, healthcare and water for Bitcoin. But there's probably something psychological when it hits 100,000. Spoke to a fundamental, but it also explains something in a logical way to people that didn't previously made sense, that allowed them to look back over the last year or two to connect on that this Bitcoin thing does have to do with inflation, but it's actually solving it permanently. Because if they didn't print that, then the expansion of credit would just grow and then contract when it became obvious that that it wasn't sustainable. But when in this world, when it becomes unsustainable, rather than bad debts being written off and the credit system being right-sized, the Fed puts more base money in. And like, you couldn't show up from your ATM and get money out if the Fed didn't put more base money in. And if you have the ability and do create, quote, money for free, what it equates to is people going and, you know, I always think about like the most visceral thing being, imagine the actual physical labor that's required to get oil out of the ground, the human capital, but also the time, energy, everything in that supply chain. I think that I would say Bitcoin obsoletes all other money is probably my most fundamental or consequential, like probably like deepest rabbit hole. And so on one hand, I'd probably say that. So, and maybe a cop out, but I'll like say a few. Like, Bitcoin is the Great Definancialization was like one that it was the last one that I wrote, but it's been one of the ones I think that's connected the most, because it's more at this kind of explaining the world the way that it is in this hyper financialized place, and connecting for people why that hyper financialized world doesn't make sense, why Bitcoin's the solution to it, and how it's going to kind of alter that and really simplify things for people. And so that would be a second one. And then like $1 sitting alongside of it, or putting $1 on top of Bitcoin, it's functionally worse than just the Bitcoin itself. And then I think, you know, the thing that I try to prime people with is like, if you actually think about Bitcoin, like what it is, what it represents, like one, there's nothing less American than the US dollar. That, you know, you can't can't solve a broken money with a new car or a new house or a new roof. The only thing that can solve a broken form of money is a better form of money. And that's what Bitcoin is. That ultimately comes down to water, right? Like if you need water to survive, you're going to go seek out water, and you're going to figure out that you're actually a lot more resilient. You can probably go a lot longer without water than you would think you can on a daily basis. Now, that the translation of that in Bitcoin, I think, is that like it might not be immediately observable to the majority of people today. Certainly not. If it were, Bitcoin would be in a very different state. But it's the same thing. They need money to survive. I don't think that. I think everyone is engineered to know that the dollar loses money, and they consciously react to it. But I think that while they're consciously reacting to it, they're also reacting to it irrationally. And if they kind of embrace the side of, putting the rights of the individual first and enshrining those and protecting them is more important than, something that realistically had no basis of the founding of our country. Not American, dollars not patriotic. That's just a false narrative.